Hi, I'm Heather Lee, co-founder and head of product at Candidly. I serve as a chapter lead in Austin, Texas. I'd love to welcome you to the Lead Through Change stage. Before we get started, let's take a moment to thank our sponsors. During this session, Collaborative and Inclusive Leadership, we have three wonderful speakers. First on stage, we have Brittany Edwards, product manager at Capital One. Brittany is the co-founder of the Diversity and Inclusion Agency Incorporated and is a digital product manager building trust and confidence through products at Capital One. An engineer by study and inquisitive by nature, she loves continuously exploring the why and learning how to build equitable solutions and accessible experiences. Brittany Edwards will share her expertise with you during our next presentation on a topic also close to my heart, purpose-driven product management. Please join me in welcoming Brittany Edwards to our stage.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for virtually joining me for purpose-driven product management. I hope you're excited to get deep and explore identity, purpose, and leadership. My name is Brittany Edwards, and I'm a product manager at Capital One. I'll save the deep part of my introduction for a little bit later. We'll go through that in an exercise. But I do want to start off with giving you an opportunity to think about this question. Do you know your purpose? Think about it. And this quote from a lovely colleague of mine, Dr. Jamaica Burge, she said, "When you know your purpose, you know what you're designed to do." So I just want to leave you with, or start you off with that. The first thing I want to get into is something very real. So 2020. 2020 looks nothing like any of us expected it to. And it's also been such a pivotal and dynamic year. So between the pandemic, working from home, and also having really great things happen, but not fully understanding how to express or live in that, 2020 has been, a lot to get through. Additionally, as a Black woman in America, I would be remiss to not mention some very impactful and important people who have helped shape the reality of 2020 for me. Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. Their lives, in addition to everything else that has been going on in 2020, really did force me to look inward and look at what I'm doing, explore why I do the things I do, and really figure out what my purpose is. So with that, I present to you purpose-driven product management. In my exploration of my purpose, I've learned the importance of purpose in my career as well, and how to drive and how to bring purpose alive on my development team and with the people that I work with. So some of the key learning objectives that I hope you all can take away or walk away with today are understanding the importance of and the relationship between psychological safety, identity, and purpose. Additionally, you'll be able to understand how being purpose-driven can help us lead teams as product managers, and how purpose is really foundational to push innovation forward. And the third are some takeaways for principles of purpose-driven leadership. We'll be exploring those three things through understanding or walking through identity and purpose, understanding and exploring our purpose as product managers, and finally concluding with some frameworks for how we can lead with purpose. So I started off by asking, do we know our purpose? But let's use an example in the development space. So to set the scene, you are a product manager, and you're discussing your intent with your development team. The scenario: after grooming and assigning stories, you ask a simple question. We've all just discussed what we're building. Do we all know why? Think about what responses you would receive in this situation. I know we aren't together, so I'll just go through some of go through some responses from my experience. I would expect to get responses around what we're building, the importance of the API, the key steps in, registering the API, identifying the endpoints, doing the UI updates, what the release schedule is going to look like. But one of the things that I find is commonly missing is an alignment to our greater purpose as a team. So what I'm trying to identify here and illustrate here in this example is purpose misalignment. So we have this purpose misalignment. So how do we shift the culture? How do we develop a collective mindset and a collective purpose so that we can actually achieve alignment? So keep that in mind. So to get to understanding purpose, I'm going to take you through a little example, starting using myself for this little experiment. So I'm Brittany Edwards. I'm a product manager at Capital One in our payments and money movement space. I'm building trust and confidence through products. I'm also the co-founder of a diversity and inclusion agency called Incorporated. I'm a daughter, sister, friend, and first-generation American. I'm a lover of sneakers, music, travel, and everything New York. And I'm really passionate about creating a more equitable future. My purpose is to be a magnet and a catalyst for my community and the people that I work with. So what I just took you through there are the three distinct parts of myself. And each level, I got a little bit deeper. So I began with my professional identity, product manager, where I work, what I'm building. The second was my personal identity, things that I do outside of work, who I am, like some stuff about my family, stuff that I love. But then I drove it home with being grounded in my purpose, to be a magnet, so bringing people together, bringing my community together, and a catalyst, so building change, impacting change, creating change. And so I hope that when I went through those three stages, you got to learn a little bit more about me and got to understand how these pieces fit together. But it's not always easy to just lay this all on the table initially. And the reason why lies in the difference between identity and purpose. So we might be familiar with the picture on the right. This iceberg is used as an analogy in many different places in many different ways. So identity is like the top of the iceberg. It's what you see. It's the fact of being who or what a person or thing is. It's what you see. I'm a Black woman, right? That's my identity. But my purpose is much deeper and it's under the surface. It's hard for us to find sometimes within ourselves. And it's also, that's what makes it harder for other people to see and a little bit harder for us to share with other people. So our purpose is the reason for which something is done or created or for which something exists. So it's really our why. It helps us understand what we're building, why we're building it, and how we move through just like this world. So like I mentioned, the deeper you get into this iceberg, the harder it is to expose those parts of ourselves, those inner deep parts of ourselves. And the reason why that is rooted in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So in this pyramid structure outlines the need, like our needs as humans for growth and just sustaining ourselves. If you look at the orange and yellow, so from the bottom up, social needs and self-esteem needs, those are our psychological needs. Those are what we really need to accomplish to feel psychologically safe enough to expose those deeper parts of ourselves. And they are also the foundation of like us truly growing. So self-fulfillment and growth and self-actualization, those are all things that we can achieve and do achieve when we have psychological safety and we are in tune with our purpose. So psychological safety is really the key to marrying the personal and professional identities. So being able to get deeper and express that part of ourselves. And also it gives us the space to fulfill our purpose. So get really into that growth space and self-fulfillment area. So now that we have a good working understanding of identity, purpose, and how that applies to ourselves as individuals, how does this apply to product management? Identity, purpose, and psychological safety are needed to live in that truth, right? And so we can really apply this from our individual selves to our professional selves. And here's how. In a similar exercise, let's use product management. A product manager, right, I've pulled this from Wikipedia, is a professional role that is responsible for the development of products for an organization, known as the practice of product management. Very straightforward, and I think very easy for all of us to understand. Responsibilities commonly include defining requirements, defining a value proposition, and have a strong focus on and prioritizing customer needs, just to name a few. But what's below that? What is the purpose of our role as product managers? And so I just want everyone to take a little beat and think about that, what our purpose as product managers are. I've crafted a couple ideas of our purpose. The first, I believe, is to inspire. The greatest human act is to inspire, and that's really what we do, sitting at the intersection of tech and design and business and crafting these intents from customer feedback and tech feedback and looking at the overall ecosystem for the industries we work in. We inspire the people we work with to create amazing products. We also support the growth of the members of the development team. We challenge and learn from our product partners. We help build our product communities. We develop and cultivate relationship with our partners, and we challenge organizational norms. I hope at least one of these 6 resonates with you all about what you feel your purpose is as a product manager. And if not, I hope we can share together in our interactive session what you feel like the purpose of product managers are. So to apply this to the example that we went over with myself, the top part, the definition, the roles and responsibilities are our identity as product managers. Below the surface, our purpose. That's really what we have to hone into, and that's what we're going to be working through for the rest of the session. So what does purpose fulfillment look like? How do we inspire, challenge, create a better future? Insert here what you have identified as your purpose as a product manager. How do we make that a reality? So let's look back to the scene that we started with. Here we have us in a room, grooming a story, asking our developers why we are doing what we're discussing. We identified that we have purpose misalignment. So how do we go from purpose misalignment to achieving purpose alignment? These are some of the major aspects of leading with purpose, right? Purpose-driven product management, applying our purpose and understanding our purpose as product managers and how we can push for change on our teams. So we walked through a few of them, but to bundle them up into 4 core areas: inspire. So inspire the development team and our partners by example. So inspiring them to feel and hopefully help them feel psychologically safe enough to understand their purpose as individuals and also understand them enough so that we can present them with and provide them with opportunities for growth. We cultivate safe space for expression, for brainstorming and healthy dissent, understanding that all of our development teams and all of our development partners look so different. How can we make spaces for people to come together and brainstorm and work together and feel safe doing so? Especially understanding that everyone in those spaces has a different purpose and a different identity. We challenge norms and shift paradigms and remove barriers of entry. We do this for our customers and the products that we create, making sure that they're accessible, making sure that they have been tested. But how do we do that internally to make sure that the processes that we have in place are really achieving the purpose of our product, of our team culture. And last but not least, embracing the collective. How do we synthesize a guiding statement of purpose to be the foundation of all these things? So this slide has a ton of information, but I am hoping that everyone can grab a screenshot and save this for later. On the left, I have what I just walked through, and on the right are some foundational aspects of what I believe we can each take away to help us accomplish how to lead with purpose. So prioritizing one-on-one time with teammates, building the foundation for these relationships so you understand their identities and their purpose. Give time for developer-driven brainstorming sessions so that everybody feels like they have buy-in and understanding of new intent and the strategies that the development team will be working on to achieve this collective mindset. Catalyze psychologically safe spaces, doing so via transparent, open conversations, and really establish and inspire a psychologically safe space. This is not always easy in some of the spaces we work in, I understand that, but there are little things that we can do, at least within our development team, to help people feel comfortable sharing their true selves. Establishing a strong feedback framework, so there is a back and forth between you and the team you work with. And using purpose-driven model to inspire the team by defining and refining a team statement of purpose. So as much work as we have done as individuals and together to identify what our purpose is as product managers, take some time to identify what your purpose is as a team. It's not simply just to create the products, but why are you creating those products? And what are the driving forces on your specific team that you can stay grounded in all the different aspects of the work that you're doing? How I did this for my team was to sit back, understand the objectives of what I'm working on in the payments and money movement space, and figuring out why would my team care about this? And what are the things that are important to us as a team? To enable and to support people who want to send large sums of money in a safe and secure way. And really simple purpose, but it's helped ground our strategy. It's helped us define goals as a team, and it's also helped us identify areas of growth and development. And last but not least here on this page is supporting divergent thinkers and embracing oppositional thoughts to push innovation forward. Even though we are grounded in a similar purpose or in the same purpose, we all are not coming from the same mindset. So we can use this purpose statement and continuously refine it, but support people with opposing ideas and give them space to share their ideas, share what they're thinking, and tailor and refine the purpose statement as needed, as long as there is a collective mindset and a collective understanding as to why that is happening. So as product managers, we are really uniquely positioned to drive impactful results, but the underlying component of what we do lies in collaboration and interpersonal relationships. Applying a purpose-driven mindset to what we do helps build a foundation of truly innovative and equitable solutions. By grounding ourselves in a purpose, it helps us understand what we are designed to do, what we're destined to do, and a collective why helps us create a better future. So thank you. I hope this was informative, and I hope you have some great takeaways. Please do reach out, stay in contact. This is all of my contact information. I'd be glad to talk more about purpose, how I identified my own purpose, explore different ideas that you have of purpose of product management, and as you synthesize your statement of purpose for your team, I would love feedback on mine, and I would love to provide feedback as well. I am so excited to engage with all of you in our interactive session, and I hope this was amazing. 2020 is 2020, but I'm so excited that I was able to present this to you all, and I hope you have an amazing time at the rest of the Women in Product Conference.
Thank you, Brittany. Next up, please welcome Penny Townsend, co-founder and CPO at Qualpay. Penny comes to us with over 20 years of experience in market strategy, new product development, and product positioning. Her deep understanding of payment processing, market requirements, and use cases drove her to found Qualpay, where she creates products to delight businesses while managing the other more mundane aspects of the business. Prior to Qualpay, Penny led the integration between Cello and Merchant eSolutions, as well as the development of other products focused on international and e-commerce markets. At Qualys, she built and managed a PCI DSS compliance product suite, and at PayPal, she led the merchant acquiring team and was responsible for the integration of VeriSign's Payflow gateway with PayPal's Express Checkout, as well as driving product development to meet the needs of the SMB market. Penny Townsend will share her expertise with you during our next presentation, all together working with engineers and designers.
Hello, I'm here to talk to you about designers and engineers and how we can get everyone to work together to build the all-together team. Over a year ago, I felt that my husband and I needed to spend more time together, and he was working at the time in San Francisco and I was in San Mateo. This was way before the pandemic and before everybody had way too much time together. But let's go back to last year, and some days we really did feel like we were ships in the night. So we took a kayak class together, and we woke up early one morning and arrived ready for our class. And with great anticipation, we made it out to the water. And I have to tell you, it was absolutely a disaster. We struggled to go anywhere, to even leave from where we got on the boat. We went around in circles. And when we finally progressed from getting away from shore, stopping the circles, we paddled way too much water into the kayak that unfortunately sinking became a great possibility. When I reflect on my product career, I realize that the kayak experience is an adept metaphor for product management and actually working with designers and engineers. The same issues are struggling with going anywhere, going in circles, and then reaching the end goal without sinking. I've actually seen many times over and over in my career. By the way, we're very lucky that it was not the first date with my husband, because there would never have been a second one. So how do we build this all-together team with the designers and engineers? And I do have some good news, both from my kayak experience with my husband and from working with designers and engineers for over 20 years, that there are 3 key practices that you can use. SOS. They can really help get everybody all on the same page, and these practices can help reduce any time that you may have been wasting, any energy that you feel like you've lost, the frustrations, costs, and ultimately avoid delivering an unsatisfactory product. And these practices are getting in sync, orientating in the right direction, and avoid sinking. So let's walk through these practices by looking at the problems they help resolve, and then what habits you can use to bring these practices alive. At the beginning of the kayak trip, we couldn't go anywhere. We were kind of stuck. We had the equipment, we had that vision of what we were doing, that tiny bit of training, perhaps should have had more. But in truth, we just weren't working together, and somehow we needed to get in sync. So let's go ahead and take a look at this first practice. And this first practice is all about getting in sync. And before we find out how to do this, let's take a look at some of the barriers that there are to try and get engineers and designers and the product person in sync. And I'm going to use this very popular tree swing analogy, where you can see from the beginning how the customer explained it to what the customer really needed is completely different. And this is very similar to the game of telephone, that every time you call somebody up and then tell them a story and that person passes it on to the next person, the story changes as it moves along. And so the same in this analogy, that the customer explains in one way, the product explains in a different way. The designer ends up designing something to be safe, so the swing's on the ground, and then the engineer designs something really cool and fun. And then really what the customer wanted was something completely different, the tire swing. Everyone here is talking the same language, but meaning and understanding is radically different. And with my husband and I, he and I received the same information about kayaking, and we were given different tasks. And I was meant to be paddling and leading because I was in front, and he was meant to be paddling and steering and following. So how is it you get everybody in sync? So let me tell you a little bit about PayPal and working there in 2005. I had just been acquired from another company and given the task of integrating the two products in 3 months. And at the time, PayPal never released products within a 9-month period, let alone a 3-month period. So on my second day, I meet with the product managers and I walk in the room and there's 14 of them, one of me. And I realized that this integration project just got dimensionally harder with the number of people. I moved on from meeting with the product team to meet with the engineers, then the designers. And so I could understand really their points of view, as well as how they understood the product work, as well as what they thought the customer was. And from here, I was able to refine what the objectives and goals were for the product. And then I also drafted a proposed integration and solution. And so now I was really ready to kick off the project. And so I took the lead, called the meeting with everybody, and reviewed everything that all of us had put together in these different groups, and we kicked off. But as soon as everybody leaves the room, as it does today, everybody starts to diverge and get out of sync. So now I need to be the driver. And to be the driver, I'm going to talk about the first habit I used, which is obsessively communicate. So behind the scenes, I am obsessively communicating. I'm working and talking with the working team. I am talking to the working team's managers, and I'm talking to the working team's people that work for them. And I didn't stop until we delivered the integrated product on time and customers were using the solution. I would walk around the building with people. I went to lunch. I took people for coffee. I stopped people in the kitchen, in the gym, by their cars. I used every way I could think of to pull that team together and keep them in sync. And partly because of the very short time frame that we had, but ultimately I was really evolving and changing the way people worked in order to deliver the product that was needed, number one, by the organization, but number two, it was actually needed by the customer. So in order to, or enable me to be the leader and obsessively communicate, I needed to use my habit two. And my habit two is the voice of the customer. So in order to take the lead, I had to establish myself as the expert and do it very quickly. And so the voice of the customer I always use when there are disagreements or friction. I will speak about the customer needs, and this will come from, and at the time this is how it came, from speaking to customers for hours, understanding their needs, the market, the products, and also the competitors. So I was able to talk from the position of the customer and became the guiding voice that aligned the team with our customers. So when these friction points came up, the way to resolve it was, let's come back to basics and talk about what the customer needs. Now, consider you're using both of these two habits and you're obsessively communicating and being the voice of the customer. We have motion and we are moving. However, it is not enough to be in motion. You need to be moving in the right direction. And so you may not be. You could actually be going around in circles. With my husband, I'd taken the lead. We were getting our oars in the water at the same time, but on different sides. We were going around in circles. So why is it not enough to lead and to set these objectives, get the whole team in sync, and then just let the project go forward? Well, let's answer that by looking at the second practice, which is orientating in the right direction. So the reason that This is such a challenge for us, keeping people in sync and getting them moving in the right direction is a result of the impact of the different values and perceptions that we bring to the table every time we see and hear things. And this ancient elephant story shows us how, when we're looking at something, we could feel something completely different than the next person. So, in this ancient elephant story, an elephant walks into the village, and the villagers sent out 4 blind people to figure out what kind of animal this being was. And so the first person feels the trunk and thinks, oh, it's got to be a snake. And then the next person feels the ear and thinks, oh my gosh, this must be a leaf. The next, the tail, oh, it's a rope. And then the next person, the leg of the elephant, it must be a tree. So this story highlights that our version of reality is based not just upon our values and perception, but also where we appear in the story. From our position, it's hard to see the whole picture. And so these blind people would never know that this was an elephant because they don't have the whole story. So the perception and values of the engineer and the designer perpetuates this idea that we all talk a little bit of a different language. But in reality, we can all talk the same language when we orientate everybody in the same direction, even when there's different values. So how do we orientate folks in the same direction? And I'm going to pause for a second and just take a look at what the values that the designer and engineer have. And this has come from working with these guys over 20 years. And you may have a designer that believes strongly that design matters and improves the bottom line, and that the engineer believes that code is to be developed for simplicity and repeatability. And then the designer has a passion for being creative and thinking in new and different ways, and the engineer has a passion for writing clean and efficient code. The designer loves to make things designy, aesthetically appealing, and beautiful, whereas the engineer loves to use the latest technology to support their code. And these values are constantly at odds with each other and will create, again, natural friction. And it's emphasized also when the engineer and designer sit in the relationship to the whole story and the development of the product. So now you can see how these problems occur. And I'm going to talk to you now about the 2 habits that you can use to orientate the engineer and designer in the same direction as the way you're going. And the first one is to investigate and understand the why and the need of what you were doing. While I was at Merchant Solutions, I was working on a product that would take away and move our volume from a third party to going direct to Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover. And I worked with our internal customer, which happened to be the finance team, and I was replacing what they were doing. And it took one accountant the whole day to go through 1 day of proof and verification. And he printed every single screen that he touched upon, and it was a paper thick print screen every day. And the finance team just wants to replace like for like. So I spent some time investigating what was actually needed by understanding the why. Why do you want what you want? And I peeled back the onion of what was needed. And what I found was that we need to do proof and verification to make sure that the daily transactions that we settled from merchants to the card brands appeared as wires the next day, and that the daily debits that we needed to pay out to merchants happened, and that this was all auditable. So now I had the why. It was much easier for me to establish what the needs were, which were a view that showed the daily settlement and daily debit, and actually allowed us to compare the money movement that happened in our bank account, and for it to have each day was the snapshot. So now I get to move on to my habit 4. So now I knew the why, and the need had become way easier. I could now tell this story passionately to the designers and the engineers and build the picture of what we could do. So in storytelling with use cases really provides that glue for the team and the momentum in the right direction. Well-crafted stories and use cases provide that vision to see the elephant and the use cases to build the necessary parts. Orientating is all in the same direction. So now I come to the third practice, which is don't think. So we are now orientated in the right direction and we're moving, and now we need to avoid calling SOS. My husband and I were now rowing, going in the right direction, but there was still something wrong. We paddled so much water in the kayak that sinking was a great possibility. And so I think about avoiding the water in the boat as being somewhat similar to QA. So let's look at the final habit that avoids us delivering unusable or buggy products, which is the habit of QAing the shit out of it. So we need to use the product as the customer would. And very early in my career, still working in payments, I was at VeriSign and we had the habit of rolling out code, causing very unintended consequences, which would cost our merchants money from hundreds and thousands of dollars a second. So it was imperative that we rolled out very tight, workable code. And after the second time of doing this, I pulled the whole team together and I changed how the rollout worked. And the team would get together in the same room and test the product end to end and experience it exactly how the customer was. And I can tell you that there were things that got revealed in those meetings that were very aha moments for the engineers, for the designers, and for everybody else involved. And it really became the icing on the cake of really building that all-together team. So to conclude, all of us want to make what we do count and matter. And these three practices we have reviewed, the SOS approach, can transform what we do when we power it up by the 5 habits. And in the last 20 years, I found that by getting the entire team in sync through obsessively communicating and being the voice of the customer, making sure we're all orientated and moving in the same direction through being an investigator and passionately storytelling, that we can make sure that we don't sink by QAing the shit out of it. I have gained the benefit of successfully rolling out and supporting many products in the payment space. If my husband and I had taken advantage of SOS at the beginning, we would have had a very different experience that day out. But who would have thought my work life would help my home life? So I invite you today for you to use SOS and these 5 habits with your team of designers and engineers, because when you do, you will build an all-together team and ignite your effectiveness, making what you do count and matter.
Thank you, Penny. Next up, please welcome Neha Singla, Senior Manager of Engineering at Optimize.ly. Prior to Optimize.ly, she was a software engineer at Microsoft Corporation in Seattle. During her tenure, she has managed teams of 20 plus people and aligned partner initiatives to deliver high-value customer and developer experiences. Neha prides herself in her ability to align project priorities with business metrics and engineer aspirations while being a committed partner to her product team counterparts. Neha is a passionate advocate for women in tech and also leads the women engineer groups at Optimize.ly and has organized multiple Girl Geek dinners at Optimize.ly. Neha Singla will share her expertise with you during our next presentation, Alleviating Product Engineering Friction. Please join me in welcoming Neha Singla to our stage.
Hi, everybody. I'm Neha Singla, and I'm a Senior Engineering Manager at Optimize.ly. It's a company that enables digital experimentation and progressive delivery. I joined Optimize.ly 7.5 years ago as their first female engineer. And in my journey from IC to leadership, I've had the pleasure of working with multiple project partners. Some relationships were tougher than the others, but they ended up teaching me so much. I'm here today to talk to you about alleviating product engineering friction and share with you 5 guiding principles that I use to navigate this relationship successfully. But before I get into that, let me tell you a well-known secret. The key ingredient behind any successful partnership is building a strong relationship and building empathy towards each other. If you do not put in the work to build a strong foundation, none of the principles that I'm going to talk about now will be effective. Having said that, let's roll on to the principles that I've been talking about. Product and engineering bring their own different strengths and are domain experts in their own right. But let's not forget that product and engineering are fighting on the same side, if you will. They're both rooting for a successful company and happy customers. I personally welcome and enjoy a healthy debate, because it just means that we are bringing out the best and the most balanced ideas for our customers. A healthy push and pull between engineering and product keeps the ecosystem balanced, thus preventing us from rabbit holing into just building cool tech or just working on feature after feature. When somebody approaches you with their ideas, listen. And I mean deeply listen. Bring curiosity to the table. Successful product and engineering partners capture the essence of the sentiment expressed and build upon it, leaning into the expertise they bring to the table. While it may come naturally to some of us need to put in a deliberate focus to bring this skill into our palette and execute it subconsciously. The takeaway here is to approach ideas with curiosity instead of bias and build upon them. Be a good listener, and you shall be heard too. When I find myself stuck in minutiae about feature deliverables and multiple different debates, I lean back on the impact versus effort graph. And I'm not talking about the green and red circles that we have here. Those are the easiest to get aligned behind. I'm talking about the circles in the middle. Time and again, we find ourselves discussing the minutiae on those individual tasks. At that point, we need to regroup and refocus our energy on chipping away at the effort involved in those tasks and shining the light and expanding the impact of those tasks. When I talk about impact, I am not talking about gut-based impact. I'm talking about well-defined, data-driven success metrics. Defining these success metrics at the beginning of a project gives product and engineering collectively a North Star and keeps them aligned throughout the project. When stuck, lean on the impact versus effort graph to get aligned and regroup. Now, we just spoke about the impact versus effort graph in a very feature delivery tactical sense. But let me remind you, do not lose the forest for the trees. It's very easy to align on high impact and low effort tasks in a very feature delivery sense. But let's not forget strategy. We need to enable our product and engineering unit to collectively invest in the big bets, thus yielding dividends over long-term feature deliverables. For example, multiple engineering orgs today are trying to move from a monolithic to a modular architecture. Effort here is multi-quarter. It would be in everybody's best interest if product brought along engineering in defining the impact of these big bets. Engineering, in turn, could then articulate how these big bets translate to customer benefits over the mid to long term, thus yielding multiple dividends over any future feature deliverables. When I sit in on my team's project retrospectives, or if I am involved in these deep threaded emails, I always try to bring my team's focus back to the big picture and try to not let them lose the forest for the trees. I mentioned earlier that product and engineering bring different strengths, but that does not mean that they have to stay exclusive. Bring the other over to your side of the world so they can develop deep empathy, they can deeply understand your problems, and also be your champion in solving those problems. My engineers have never been more energized and refreshed than I have seen them after they've been at customer site visits or user research sessions. And that's because they have seen the firsthand impact of their work on their customers. Engineering, on the other side, should take the time to involve and invite product to engineering project retrospectives. This will enable product to see firsthand how the sausage is made and also see the difficulties in delivering that sausage to customers. This will enable them to function collectively as a unit and solve these problems together instead of having friction amongst each other. Constantly seek ways to be inclusive, build that empathy, and be a collective unit. Let me tie all these guiding principles that I spoke about with a small example that I recently observed at Optimizely. Due to lots of customer requests and planned internal improvements, we decided to rewrite our feature flagging system. Product started with bringing engineering along to our user research sessions. In follow-up discussions, product started with, we need to make the UI more flexible for the users for these sessions. Engineering responded with, sure, and while we're at it, let's also make it more performant, because that's what we heard in the user research sessions. Sounds great, right? We move on, and products like, well, while we're at it, let's also make the internal data models map and be more intuitive to our front-end behavior. Why not? And engineering goes with, sure, and while we are at it, let's also make it a service. Let's make it a standalone component. So I know a lot of y'all must be thinking that this is the definition of scope creep. Yes, I get it. But what this did was it gave us a pot of great ideas to choose from. We then applied the impact versus effort axis and the strategic versus tactical lens, really, to understand which one of these features would not be as high impact for customers. We took those features away because we all are going for high impact, be it the short term, be it in midterm, or be it long term, right? So we took away those features. We then applied both these lenses to understand how to front load the highest impact deliverables to customers in the beginning, and then so on and so forth. We used these lenses and came up with very digestible milestones of front loading this high impact deliverable first, and then high effort, mid-level impact, and so on and so forth. You can see a lot of hearts in the slide, but the truth is that I have never seen product and engineering be so well aligned on a project before this. Product was our champion in making this work as a service, as a self-contained component, even though it added a lot of time to this project. We also maintained and received a lot of more customer love during the implementation phase of this project with just the examples and demos that we've been showing to our customers. We're super excited about this. I'll leave you with a summary slide of the 5 guiding principles that I just spoke about. Now, mind you, that all 5 of these may not be applicable to your situation. So I'll urge you to choose the one that applies to your situation and use it as needed. I hope you find these as useful as I have found them in navigating and building a strong partnership with product. Stay safe, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany Edwards, Penny Townsend, and Neha Singla, and to all those who have joined us live. If you would like to connect with our speakers, they're available for Q&A and roundtable discussions in our interactive sessions at 11 a.m. Pacific Time. You can find the sessions on the side navigation of the conference event platform. Coming up next on this stage, join us for the panel, Adapt to Work in the COVID Era. Be sure to check out our many ways to network with your fellow attendees. Reach out directly or meet someone new in our networking mixers under Sessions, where you'll be paired with a fellow PM for a time to chat. Or start your own follow-up chat, click Add a session and start your own roundtable, then send your session URL in a DM here on the conference event platform to anyone you'd like to invite to join. Log on to the Women #20WIP app to review presentation decks and replay any talks you missed or want to dive deeper into. Don't forget to check out our virtual selfie station in the #20WIP app. Grab your Women in Product swag at our online store at bonfire.com/store/WIP. I know a lot of us are either currently job seeking or always on the lookout for a next cool opportunity. If that's you, check out the virtual sponsor pavilion. You'll find recruiters ready to chat and PMs for your dream companies to give you the breakdown of what it takes to work there. Thank you again for joining us, and be sure to join us for our next session on this stage. adapt to work in the COVID era.